Hey guys, what's up? It's your course director, Emily, right here. Just wanted to give you a little bit of positive, productive feedback on these revised resumes that you sent my way. So what I'm going to do is poke through these one by one. I have them loaded in individual browser windows, and I'm going to offer a little bit of insight on some things to think about to help evolve this to its next best place. So just to take a look at where you are in the timeline, Portfolio 7 is the next and last stop. And so ideally, in that class, you are going to be using your resume to help find a job after graduation. So do yourself a favor and go into Portfolio 7 with a strong version of your resume. Now this exercise was meant to be a visual one. That is to say it's much harder to focus and distill your skills and abilities onto a single page than it is to have a 3 to 4 page document that just goes on and on and on. So the exercise here was to get really clear on what it is that you want to share about yourself that would position you for the job that you're trying to get. And so I'm going to offer a little bit of insight, and you need to kind of filter that through what makes sense to you, right? So your professional aims, your objectives for getting a job, and blend that all together into the next best, most powerful version of your resume. So I'm going to start here with Gabe. At the top, it says that Gabe is a 21-year-old content creator that just loves what he does. So a few things jump out at me about this. One is that you don't want to identify your age because that can be used against you. If people think you're young, they might not think you have the experience needed for the job. So you want to take away things that might act as a bias towards hiring you. The second thing is that Gabe is referring to himself in third person. He does this, right? But then if we look down here in this section, he talks about, I did a lot of portrait photography, right? And so it is he and I. So he's using third person and first person. And so with your resume, I would encourage you to use first person language, right? And to be consistent throughout. I can see up here that we've got different ways to contact Gabe. I'm happy to see that you have your portfolio website listed up here, in addition to LinkedIn and Instagram where we can see your content. Right up here where you talk about photography, you say like, I did a lot of photography during my week vacation, right? Like that's kind of positioning that you've been doing photography like for 1 week, right? That like you, I know that you have way more experience than that, but the way that you list this makes it sound like you're listing a week's worth of experience, right? And also you have a single bullet point. Bullet points are meant to be multiple or plural. And so if you are going to have a paragraph, then just have a paragraph, right? You don't need a bullet for that. But my recommendation for you would be to do 3 to 4 bullets for each of these that talk about your skills and ability in that area, right? So you could easily pull out 3 to 4 short statements here that are a deeper, more accurate contextualization of your relationship as a freelance photographer. Same thing here, right? Like the same thing with video editing, and then with social media influencer. It's more than just posting videos, right? It's strategic. Talk about the strategy, and also talk about the impact. Like how far has your work gone for them? What measurable results does Papa John's get for having you as a social media influencer, right? So that kind of thing that shows the impact of your work is going to be important here. We've got your interests. I don't really see much, like we've got video skills. I don't see anything though about like the software that you use. So many of these creative positions that you might be applying for, to do content creation, might require different programs in the Adobe suite, and you're going to want to list those things out specifically where you have proficiencies to make sure that like when you're submitting a resume in an online environment, that they're going to be able to flag that you have the experience needed for the job that's posted. All right, next up we're going to take a look at Ryan. So also a really cool design here. Looking at this, I see just space to fill in, and there's a couple ways that you could do that. Is get a little bit more wordy about what it means to do each of these things, right? Like, so I volunteered to photograph events happening, right? But like, what kind of photos were you looking for? How many did you take? What was the camera you used? Were any of them used in social media campaigns? There's all kinds of ways that you can build up more of a story around each of these things, and I encourage you to do that. Looking at what I see here, I don't see a portfolio website, and so for a photographer, designer, videographer, someone who has so much visual output to their work, that's a definite oversight. Here you have Adobe Creative Cloud apps. I would list these out just individually: Adobe Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. Because again, that is important keyword content to be listed, and you have room for it to go longer, right? So here it extends much further out than any of these, and so I would definitely consider just kind of dropping those down individually in this list. This isn't personal info as much as it's contact info, so I might label it as such. Looking at your high school information here. High school diploma is a prerequisite to getting into college, right? So you wouldn't be at Full Sail if you didn't have high school credentials, and so for that reason it's kind of superfluous, and I don't think that you need to add this here, unless the exception is, of course, that you went to some sort of specialty school that had like a media certification or something that you wanted to showcase like deeper knowledge or training in a certain area, right? The last thing I want to say is that your margin space here, right, like all of this content goes really close to this edge, and if this document is the container and this is your content, you want to make sure that there's equal spacing from the content within the container to its edge, right? So here we have at least this much. We need at least that same amount here. It looks, what I see here looks the same as about up here, and you have a lot of extra stuff down here. I would say use the available space that you have. You have to find that right combination of you've told them enough, but not too much, and that you've done it in a visually compelling way. And I think you have that here with the visuals, but I see a lot of kind of holes that you can work to add more and deeper contextualization of the story around your work. So here we have angels. So nice to see you're developing brand. One thing that jumps out to me immediately, though, is this typeface that you used for this information, this condensed bold font, is actually incredibly difficult to read, right? Like I like it as a heading or a subheading, something that has like a couple of words, but in this amount of text, it's actually very difficult to scan this document for the information because it's so condensed. It makes me have to slow down and look really hard to see what's going on here, and that's not what you want for somebody who's reading your resume, who is literally going to look at it for about 8 seconds before they decide to put you in the keep or not keep pile, right? So first recommendation is take this typography and make it easy to read, something more like this, but not bold, right? Because bold is a stylistic choice that you use sparingly, and sparingly means every so often to give something emphasis, right? Like you want to give it emphasis to say that it stands out because it's not like the rest. So if everything is bold, nothing is bold. If everything is emphasized, nothing is emphasized. And so like what I would do is switch these fonts. So this font used for your headings. So experience would be in this font, and then the font that you use for your headings, experience and education, etc., unbold it and use that as your body text, right? Another thing too is there's a lot of weirdness around your bullets, right? So I have a bullet and then I have dash dash. There needs to be consistency here, right? I don't think that you need bullets or dashes anywhere up in this area or space. The bullets look great here. There is a kind of a dash situation going on there. But like, I'm not sure, like it just kind of compounds. There's a lot of different like wingdings or little shapes or things that kind of add just distraction to what we see here. I don't think you need to include your address on here. I think your contact information over here is enough. I can appreciate that you do have your portfolio site, which will showcase your work, and I can see as I hover over it that it will link me there if I click it. This is a really like complete resume, Angel. You've done a really nice job of finding the words to talk about the things that you've done. I just think with a few stylistic tweaks, you could get this to a much cleaner place that would be easy to absorb. And once you kind of get rid of this address up here at the top, it gives you a little bit more breathing room to play over in this area. So high five on this. Next up, we're taking a look at Juliana. So we see very easily multimedia content creator. And then you give us some like good context up here of what it is that you do. like in the realm of content creation. So as I'm looking at this, like it's very visually impactful. But a couple of things, like here under jobs, hello local, that needs to have a different appearance than the body text that it describes it. So bolder and bigger, freelance. And I would also switch the order of these. So the first thing is freelance photographer, bigger and bolder, hello local, underneath it, also a little bit bigger and a little bit bolder, but not as bold as this, right? And then your body text is just the contextualization of what it means to be a freelance photographer. And do that for each one of these sessions here. I would recommend 3 bullet points for each one of these. Certainly you can tease out what you did to come up with 3 short statements. And then you're just gonna have a nice visual consistency with what you put there. I see jobs, but then I also see experiences. Sometimes I think that this could get like a little confusing. So I guess maybe this is paid employment and this is volunteer. But what I might talk about is like work history up here, and then maybe this is projects or project experience, something along that lines. Education, we've got this up here. I don't think you need a bullet point. Looking at this skills summary, I don't understand these lines and the dots, right? Like, I don't get it, because it looks like a spectrum, but the 2 ends of these things would say my video production is at one end of the spectrum and I'm personable on the other. And so like stylistically, the layout and the choices don't add to anything. They mostly just confuse. So we have volunteer experience, which is cool here, but like, why are you sharing this? What's important to know about this? It requires deeper meaning. So I want you to think about, if I'm saying that I work at Second Harvest, what does that say about me? What do I want people to know? What did I do there, right? How does this add value to me as a potential employee? Every decision that you make about what to include on this 1-page document needs to be super intentional, right? It all needs to gel and be consistently forming the shape of you as the perfect person for the job or the position that you're applying for. If you don't feel like you have enough room, these icons are really big. You could shrink these down for sure. I'm looking for your portfolio, right? See phone number, email, and then these things here, social. But where's your portfolio? This is going to be highly necessary for people to take a look at your freelance content creation, right? If your resume is what you say you can do, your portfolio shows me how well you do that. You need to make sure that's available for someone to follow that breadcrumb there. Next up, we're gonna take a look at Manda. So this is like really clean, really colorful. Like it kind of, it is on brand for who I know you to be. So we have your heading and then trilingual media communications strategist. I would bring this down a little bit to get it on a single line. Right here, this big paragraph, I would go ahead and left align that. Anytime you have paragraph text, you want it left aligned. If you have like a list that's not bulleted, I think that center alignment is fine. But anytime you have paragraph text where people are reading, it's easier to read when things are left aligned. We've got your contact information here and your address, but where's your portfolio site, right? So your address is not as important. Your physical address is not as important as your web address. Let's put it that way. So here we have your education, and you've got all the extra courses that you've done, which is cool. I'd like to see you break up these paragraphs into bulleted, like a bulleted list. So this isn't just one bullet. These are several bullets, and I want you to get them into shorter statements so that I'm not having to read this like a paragraph. Overall, this is really gorgeous. You've done a great job. I don't know if period is needed after intern. Unless it was like an internship and you're abbreviating that. I maybe just would say radio co-host intern, something along those lines. But overall, this is really great. And if you guys have any questions about this feedback, holler to me. But again, the expectation is that you make changes that are relevant to your professional goals, aspirations, to get this into a great place as you go into Portfolio 7 and from there into the working world. Thanks, guys.